In this very short video, I'd like to just pick up some points several of you have raised and questions you've raised in the first week of your Python experience with object-oriented programming, which you understand because you've been using this thing called classes. It's not a long video, but it's quite useful to, I hope, to be able to see this. The very first thing to notice when you do Python programming is this function here. It's got double underscore in it, double underscore, has always the word self, might have another variable, and then it has a bunch of code in here. Now what's peculiar about this? In this case, it's not so much it's peculiar. This double underscore in it is a very important function or method. It's called a constructor. And it is the function that executes when you turn this class into an object. Okay, and your notes will tell you all of that. But here's the peculiarity. In these functions, when they're inside a class, they all seem to have this word self in the brackets. Why do they have that? Well, it is a way that the environment, the Python environment, let's just change the color. It's the way the Python environment binds this function to the class by using the word self. So that's the first thing that's quite peculiar. Why is it peculiar? It's peculiar because languages like Java don't do this. So if you move into Java or C++ or C#, all object-oriented programs, or even VB.NET, they don't have this extra variable, this extra parameter inside the functions that you define. So it's a bit odd because you don't do anything with it. Once you've written it, you never use it, you never fire it up in any kind of way or pass anything through it. It just binds this to this. That's the first peculiarity. The second peculiarity is if inside a class, so if we have a class and we give it a name and we've got a function, and if I call this fn1 for my function, and I have a variable or a value that I'm going to pass in, remember that won't stand. If I wrote that, it would complain because it needs to have the first parameter, self, okay? That peculiarity, self comma. So if we go back to this function here, you might have noticed when you're looking at it, you have this type of thing, self.say val equals value. Or in some other functions, you might have just the word val equals value. So let's just make the distinction very clear. If you see self.val, this is a variable that's given the value passed in, but because you use self.val, this is now visible outside of this function and inside the whole class. If you don't use the word self and you just write val equals value, this val, because it doesn't have this bit at the beginning, is only visible inside this function. And that's a very important distinction. In lots of typical object-oriented languages, you actually, after you've written out your class words, you actually explicitly declare your variables at the top of your class. But you don't do that with Python.